Hello? I don't know how to explain this without sounding exaggerated, but I need to try. Since I entered this relationship, I felt that there was someone else occupying a place that didn't belong to them. It wasn't an ex. It wasn't another woman. It was his mother. She didn't scream at me. She didn't insult me. She never disrespected me directly. She simply started doing things that made me feel that I wasn't necessary. She decided. She gave opinions. She intervened. And the most painful thing was that my partner never seemed to see it as a problem. I'm writing to you because I don't know if this is normal, if I am exaggerating, or if someone really wanted to take my place. I don't want to give my name. I only ask that if you share this story, you ask those listening to leave an
Anonymous name in the comments. I need to know if anyone else has lived through something like this. If this message made you feel uncomfortable, it is because it touches something very real. Today we are not going to talk about bad mothers-in-law. We are going to talk about boundaries that were never set, about partners who didn't know how to differentiate between love and dependency. Today we talk about when a third person starts to occupy a place that doesn't belong to them.
She remembers that at the beginning, everything seemed normal. A present mother, attentive, giving opinions to help. She thought, it's normal, it's his mom. She does it with affection. I don't want to be exaggerated. And she decided to adapt. The first gestures that make you uncomfortable, it wasn't something big, it was details, right? She decided things about the house. She organized times and routines. She gave opinions on how things should be done. And she knew everything before her. Nothing offensive, but constant.
I felt like I was always arriving late to decisions that had already been made. First, reflection to the audience. They don't always take your place all at once. Sometimes they occupy it little by little.
A complicity that hurt. She started to notice something that made her deeply uncomfortable. They talked and she was left out. Glances, codes, quick decisions. I was part of the relationship, but not of the team. And that hurts.
The phrase that was repeated the most. Every time she felt uncomfortable and said it, she heard the same thing. She just wants to help. That's how my mom is. She doesn't do it with bad intentions, and with every phrase, she felt smaller.
Second reflection, that someone has good intentions doesn't mean they aren't crossing boundary.
The space that started to shrink. She felt there was no longer a clear us. There was her, him, his mother, and that triangle was never spoken about. I started to feel like I was extra. The difficulty of saying it out loud. How do you say something like that without looking like the villain? How do you explain that it hurts you, that another woman has more influence in your relationship than you? She didn't know how to say it without looking bad. Key reflection. When there are no clear boundaries, discomfort becomes guilt.
Silence as a defense. She started to stay silent, to let it pass, to talk when she felt she was exaggerating. And so, little by little, she started to disappear inside the relationship.
Closing of part 1. She still didn't dare to name what was happening.
But she already felt something very clear. There was someone occupying a place that didn't belong to them. In the next part, we are going to enter into something more delicate. When you start competing with your partner's mother, when love gets confused with dependency, uncomfortable sensation she couldn't name, and she says that at first she couldn't put a name to what she felt. It wasn't jealousy, it wasn't rejection, it wasn't hate, it was a constant discomfort. I felt I was competing, but I didn't know against whom. And when she understood that it wasn't a person external to the relationship, but someone inside.
The invisible comparison. They didn't say it to her directly, but she felt it. Implicit comparisons. My mom likes it this way. My mom has always done it this way. My mom knows more about this. Every phrase seemed innocent, but together they sent a clear message. Her opinion was above hers. First reflection to the audience. You don't compete when they compare you. You compete when your place isn't defined.
The authority that didn't belong to her. She started to notice that her mother-in-law made decisions without consulting her. I felt I was competing, gave opinions on intimate couple matters, intervened in argument, had access to everything. And the hardest part, he allowed it.
Love confused with dependency. She realized something painful. He wasn't being a bad son. He was being a bad partner. Because loving your mother doesn't mean letting her direct your relationship.
Second reflection, the problem is not a present mother. The problem is an emotionally absent partner. The sensation of being displaced, she felt her place shrinking in the house, in the decisions, in the intimacy. I didn't feel like his partner.
I felt like a guest with responsibilities, and that wears you down. The attempt to talk about it. One day, she gathered the courage. She didn't accuse, she didn't attack. She said something simple. I feel displaced. The answer was immediate. You are exaggerating. It's my mom. Why do you see competition where there isn't any? And again, guilt. Third reflection. When you point out a problem and they call you exaggerated, they aren't resolving anything. The normalization of the abnormal, over time, she started to adapt, to yield, to not give opinions, to wait for others to decide, because she felt that her voice had no weight. The effect on her self-esteem. She started asking herself, am I unnecessary? Could he live the same without me? And those questions shouldn't exist in a healthy relationship. Key reflection. In a relationship, no one should make you feel replaceable.
The intimacy that dilutes, even private moments stopped feeling private. Opinions, unsolicited advice, constant presence. I felt we were never alone. And without intimacy, the connection suffers, the emotional fatigue. She was exhausted, not from arguing, but from sustaining something that wasn't balanced. I was getting tired of competing for a place that should be natural. Closing of part 2, she no longer doubted what she felt. She doubted if that place would ever be hers in the next part. Okay, we are going to enter the most delicate point when the mother becomes the priority and you remain in the background. The moment she saw it clearly, she says it wasn't a big fight. It was a small, everyday scene, a decision that should have been made between the two of them. It was already made before she spoke. There I understood that I wasn't the priority, not because he didn't love her, but because there was already another woman occupying that emotional place. The priorities that hurt. He started to notice a clear pattern. His mother's opinion was always first. Plans with her were immovable. Couple decisions were consulted outside. Boundaries were never set. And when she expressed discomfort, he replied, "It's my mom. She has always been there. I can't fail her."
First reflection to the audience. Loving your mother shouldn't imply failing your partner. Guilt as a defense. Every time she said something, he felt attacked. He didn't reflect. He defended himself. Do you want me to cast her aside? That is unfair. You are asking too much of me. And the conversation always ended the same. Her asking for forgiveness for having expressed a basic need. The hidden message. What she heard wasn't just words. It was this. Your place is flexible. Hers is not. And that breaks something very deep.
Second reflection. When a relationship doesn't have clear boundaries, the most invasive person ends up ruling. The attempt to build us, she tried to bring him closer, to talk about projects, about intimacy, about shared decisions, but there was always a she said.
A, she thinks. A, she believes. We were never just the two of us. The mother as authority. She started to notice that her mother-in-law gave opinions on the relationship, validated or invalidated decisions, had complete emotional access, and he didn't see the problem. Because for him, that was normal.
Third reflection to the audience. What is normal for one can be suffocating for the other, he biggest wound. One day, she needed support.
Something personal, something painful. He listened, and then said, I'm going to talk it over with my mom. And there, something broke. I didn't want him to solve it with her. I wanted him to be with me. The hard understanding. She understood something that hurt to accept. He didn't know how to be a partner without his mother. Not because he didn't want to, but because he had never learned. Fourth reflection, a relationship cannot grow if it remains tied to childhood. The change in her. She started to withdraw, to not share, to not ask, because she knew that everything would end up filtered. I felt exposed even in my own relationship. The emotional cost. Living like this has consequences. Anxiety, sadness, sensation of not belonging, loss of intimacy, and a constant question, what place do I occupy here?
KEY reflection, you cannot be a partner if you are always competing with a mother. At the internal breaking moment, one night she looked at herself in the mirror, tired, confused, and she asked herself a different question: can I keep living like this? And for the first time, she didn't know what to answer. Closing of part 3, she was no longer confused, she was exhausted.
In the next part, we are going to enter the turning point, when you decide to set boundaries, even if that inconveniences everyone.
The moment she decided to speak, she says it wasn't from anger, it was from exhaustion. I realized that staying silent was breaking me more than saying something that might inconvenience others. She didn't want to fight, she didn't want to attack, she just wanted to exist with clarity within her own relationship.
Setting boundaries without knowing how. She didn't know exactly what to say. There wasn't a manual for that. How do you explain that it hurts you that another person makes decisions that don't belong to them? How do you say you need intimacy without being called exaggerated? Even so, she spoke. The difficult conversation. She told her partner something very simple. I feel that your mom is occupying a place that should belong to us. She didn't scream, she didn't accuse. She just named what she felt.
The reaction she didn't expect, she expected surprise, maybe reflection, but she received immediate defense. How can you say that? She just wants to help. That is disrespectful. And suddenly, the boundary turned into an offense.
First reflection to the audience. When you set a boundary for the first time, not everyone reacts well, because they were comfortable without it. The turn of guilt. The conversation was no longer about the problem. It was about her. You are very harsh. You don't understand a mother's love. You are exaggerating. And again, she ended up as the villain. The fear of being the bad one. She felt fear. Not of losing the relationship, but of being labeled as the problematic one, the ungrateful one, the one who breaks the harmony. And that fear weighs heavy.
Second reflection, setting boundaries doesn't make you bad. It makes you aware. The attempt to talk to the mother-in-law.
She asked herself if she should speak directly, but she knew something. Without her partner's backing, any conversation was destined to fail. I couldn't face her if he wasn't with me, and that confirmed something painful. The loneliness in that moment. She didn't feel accompanied. She felt exposed, as if she had pointed out something forbidden, and that made her doubt. Third reflection to the audience. A boundary without support feels like an attack into the void. The silence after that conversation, something changed. There were no screams. There were no arguments. There was distance, coldness, tension. I felt they were punishing me for having spoken. The cost of inconveniencing. She understood something hard. Telling the truth has a price when others benefit from silence, and she was paying that price. The definitive internal change. That night, alone, she thought something clearly for the first time. I don't want to keep living in a place where setting boundaries turns me into the problem. And that idea, she could no longer erase.
Key reflection. If to belong, you have to stay silent. That is not your place. And losing of part 4, she had done something very brave. Speak, even if it wasn't well received, even if it inconvenienced. In the next and final part, we are going to close this story with the most important thing. The final decision, the learning, and the message for whoever feels the same. When she stopped trying to explain herself, she says there was a very clear moment. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't a betrayal. It was tiredness. I got tired of having to justify why it hurt me. And when someone gets tired of explaining themselves, it's not because they don't have reasons. It's because they already explained themselves too many times, a truth that was hard to accept. For a long time, she thought the problem was her mother-in-law. The real problem wasn't her. It was that he never occupied his place as a partner. And accepting that hurt more than any external conflict. KEY reflection, a mother-in-law cannot occupy your place if your partner doesn't leave it free for her. The moment of lucidity. She started to observe without emotion, without defending, without justifying. And she saw the facts clearly. Decisions kept going through the mother. Boundaries didn't exist.
Silence continued to be the answer. There was no change, only waiting, and she could no longer keep waiting.
Fatigue Greece no one sees, she cried. Not just for the relationship, but for the idea she had of it, the home she imagined, the team she thought she was forming. I cried for the place I thought would one day be mine. That Greece is silent, but profound, a secant reflection to the audience. Sometimes it doesn't hurt to lose a relationship. It hurts to accept that it never was what you believed. The decision. She took a decision. Not impulsive, not full of rage. Calm decision, but firm. I am not going to stay where I am always the third one.
And that phrase marked the end of a stage. Choosing herself without hate. She didn't leave hating anyone. She didn't blame the mother. She didn't scream. She simply understood that you cannot build a partnership if someone else occupies the center. And she decided not to keep competing. What she learned. With time, she learned important things. Love without boundaries gets messy. The partner must be a priority, not an option. Staying silent to belong always has a cost, and above all, I deserve a place where I don't have to fight to exist. Direct message to the audience. Interaction. This subscriber asked for something very clear, not to feel alone. So, if this story resembles yours, leave an anonymous name in the comments, share your experience, or write, I also felt like I was extra, because reading another woman many times is the first step to stop doubting. Final message from the subscriber. She closed her message with these words, I didn't hate his mother. I didn't want to fight. I only understood that I cannot love in a place where I am not a priority.
Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for listening without judging. Remember this, you are not asking for too much. You are asking for your place. And your place should not be disputed. Channel farewell. If this story accompanied you, subscribe, share, and come back. Here we keep talking about what hurts, but also about what liberates.